Welcome to our one-on-one series here at FCDallas.com, and today we've got a special guest as we're at the visiting team hotel in preparation of tonight's game. I'm Bobby Rhine alongside Fox Soccer Analyst Kyle Martino. Kyle, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's good to be in the team hotel the day before a game as an analyst nowadays. A lot less pressure. I'm just hanging out.
You
just
can eat
relax.
what you want at breakfast?
Yeah. Eat whatever I want, crushing bacon, maybe get a beer the night before. My world has completely changed.
That's perfect for you. That's how us former players think.
Yeah, exactly.
Kyle, I want to take a look back on your career and how you got to this position. You're drafted in 2002 by the Columbus Crew. You went MLS Rookie of the Year in that rookie year.
Long time ago.
And then you go to the Galaxy. You end up retiring in 2008. Tell us what that journey has been for you to getting into your role today.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, you know, for me to fall in love with soccer while there isn't a professional soccer league was sort of interesting as a young American kid growing up and being a sports fan. And to in 1996 see that there's a league that was sort of a beacon at the end of this that actually gave me a goal. I became fanatical about soccer. I mean, my family almost disowned me with how many windows I broke in the house and how crazy I was and missing dinners and just night in, night out, just doing whatever I could to try to find that field. And when I finally found it as a rookie, I remember being really frustrated because I wasn't starting right away. And, you know, like any professional athlete, you know, you have this confidence in yourself that borderlines on cockiness where you think, you know, I'm good enough, I should be out there, I should be playing. And I remember being so frustrated when I first got in the league because I wanted to play right away. You know, I wanted to prove that I belong being here, that I can make a difference on the team. And it took 4 or 5 games before, I remember I had Wilmar Perez, who had played in the World Cup for Colombia, who was an outstanding player ahead of me. And I remember just biding my time and just waiting, and I finally got that opportunity. I got my first start and got player of that match. And from then on, it was just, you know, I just went after it and was having a blast and felt so comfortable out there. And you know, having the Rookie of the Year in the first season was, for me, just such a great moment because I had worked so hard and wanted it so desperately and was in an unbelievable class of soccer players, Brad Davis and some of these other guys that came out during that year that were very talented guys coming out of college. So that was, you know, for me, up to that point, you hit these checkpoints as an athlete, and that was one of those checkpoints that sort of made everything worth it before that. All the hard work and all the, you know, missing the homecomings and missing the parties and, you know, because I was a pretty ornery kid. I liked to get out in the mix and I had to, you know, I had to control that. And so, you know, my career in MLS was, you know, a lot shorter than I would have hoped and shorter than, you know, a lot of guys' careers because of injury. And it was really, really hard to start, you know, checking off goals and to start make it further in my soccer career, only to have my body sort of giving out on me as I was going up. And that was something that was so hard to deal with because, you know, I was getting a lot of the things that I wanted out of my life as a soccer player, which, you know, when you talk about goals in anyone's life, they have goals that are all over the place. Mine was just soccer focused. So to see that what I'd spent my entire life trying to build was going to be taken away from me. And I remember the moment I sat in George Mandelbaum's office, who was the U.S. national team doctor and helped with the Galaxy. And he said, listen, Kyle, after many surgeries and injections before games, he said, I think it might be time to hang it up. I think this might be the end.
And how old were you at that time?
I was 28.
28 years old,
yeah.
And knew that was going to be it for you.
Yeah, and that was so tough, man. It was so tough. I was 28 years old, and that should have been nearing the peak.
Yeah.
You know, that should have been when all those guys are, you know, coming in at 15 and 16, and the peak is at like 20 nowadays. But you know, I figured this was, in my head, I looked at that World Cup coming up as that was going to be sort of my moment. This was going to be my peak. And I remember after the ankle injury in the Confederations Cup, and that was 2003, 2004, somewhere around then, that was when things kind of started going in the wrong direction and injuries started to pile up, and that sort of last point where Dr. Mandelbaum said, you know, he brought out a tape recorder and he said, I've got to record this to say that my recommendation is your soccer career is done. Man, the tears just started flowing, you know, because everything I'd built and pushed for to that point came to an abrupt end, and it wasn't my decision. It was just something that I couldn't, you know, I couldn't stop. And so I immediately got out of soccer. You know, I was so.
Were you angry at the game?
Yeah, I was mad. I was so mad that something that meant so much to me and something I'd worked so hard on was being taken away from me. And so I don't know if it was anger as much as just being so disappointed. You know, so disappointed in feeling like I let people down, let myself down. You know, coming into the league, there was so much talk of the player I could have been, and I believed it too. You know, I loved those comparisons to Tab and Claudio and all this stuff. And to know that I didn't reach that full potential and didn't get where people hoped I would was so disappointing. And, you know, to go out the way I did, I was just, you know, I was really frustrated because my last games were fractions of myself because I just wasn't capable of what my body wasn't capable of what I thought I could do on the field. So having that moment at 28 was so tough. So I immediately turned my back on soccer and just, I went and worked in Wall Street. I was like, what's the furthest from being a professional athlete?
Wall Street would be it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I'm gonna put a suit on every day, jump on the subway, and go do finance. And ESPN had reached out to me and asked me if I was interested in doing a game. And I had some reservations because I was so worried that getting that close to soccer again would be painful. You know, I was so worried, you know, kind of like an alcoholic going into a bar. You know, just being in that bar might cause you to want to grab a drink.
What road are you going to go down?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was so worried to be that close to the game if it would just remind me of a lot of these things that disappointed me so recently. And what I found was going into the booth and covering games was the perfect next move. It was such an unbelievable opportunity to fill a void that I felt day in and day out of missing this thing that meant so much to me. And I was kidding myself if I thought I could turn my back on soccer, you know? And so going into the booth, as you know, is the perfect distance to be a fan again. You know, to be away, to be at the game, to be at the stadium, but not be so close that you miss it. Not be so close that you're down on the field and you have these disillusioned thought of going out there and being able to play still. I know I can't. I know I can't do that. So being in the booth is where I belong and is where I'm going to have a relationship with soccer for the rest of my life, hopefully, you know, if I'm lucky.
Well, you do a fantastic job.
Thanks,
I know
man.
We all love it. I want to bring you back to something you just touched on, and it was the expectation and the comparisons with Tab Ramos and some of the great American central midfielders. Because I can remember playing against you, Kyle, and the conversations in our locker room was always, keep a close eye on Kyle Martino. He's a creative player. He can make things happen for Columbus or the LA Galaxy. Did you ever feel at any point it was a lot to live up to? And at what point did you ever feel a disappointment in that, you know? Yeah,
you know, it was a lot to live up to, but I loved that, you know what I mean? I loved that, you know, the comparisons didn't put pressure in my life that hurt me. I think they helped me. You know, I loved getting sort of that validation of a player that I looked up to. Claudio Reyna and Tab Ramos were two of the players that I grew up watching and trying to emulate my game after. Went to UVA because of Claudio Reyna. You know, grew up in the tri-state area where those guys grew up. And so getting articles coming out where I first started getting in with the national team and announcers. I remember Eric Winalda said it the first time when we played at New England my second year, comparing me to Tab, and I loved it. You know what I mean? Of course you do, because it's so flattering. And any pressure after that was pressure I put on myself. I didn't feel any external pressure from teammates or coaches or media. I put pressure on myself because I knew I was good, and I knew that I'd worked hard enough to become the player I was, and I didn't want to let myself down. You know, the comparisons just for me made me feel like I was an egotistical, you know, crazy guy that thought I was that good. So having those comparisons were great. I wasn't nearly as good as they were. It was just people telling me you're on the right path, keep it up. So any disappointment I had through my career when I look back on it is knowing that I never got there. You know, I was never as good as Claudio Reyna. I was never as good as Tab Ramos. Maybe at moments I had flashes of it, but I never consistently became the player that they were and had the career that they had. And that's really disappointing because anytime you're on the track to do anything in your life and you're derailed, whether it's because of circumstances you can't control or you can, and I think there were both, it's really disappointing. So I look back on my career very grateful that I got the opportunity to do what I loved for a living and got to represent my country, got to get these honors that I got during my career. So there's no regret. It's just there's a lot of disappointment that I would still be eating pasta last night and, pounding Gatorade, waking up at 2 a.m. to go to the bathroom like you do as a soccer player and getting ready for this game, and that's gone. So there's a lot of disappointment there, but it's more nostalgic. It's not real for me anymore because I know I've come to the point in my life where that's past and I'm moving forward.